If you're thinking about moving to the Orlando, Florida area, then you're going to want to know about what is great about this area, but you're going to need to know what's not so great about the most prominent city in all of Central Florida. Orlando is a huge destination for people all over the world, and we're famous for our sunshine, Disney, and all the attractions. But if you're going to actually be living in Orlando, then you're going to want to stick around as I address the pros and some cons of Orlando, Florida. Look, I've lived in the area for decades, so my objective is not to try to sell you on the Orlando area, because look, I'm here to tell you that it's not all sunshine and rainbows here. In fact, I believe that a couple of the cons that I'm going to show you today are going to blow you away. So let's jump right in with some of the pros of Orlando, Florida. So the first pro that I'm going to talk about today is the job market, which I believe is vastly underrated. The hospitality industry is big, primarily because of all the theme parks that come here to our area. These theme parks provide entry-level jobs and all sorts of executive jobs as well. Disney is the top employer, but look, SeaWorld, Universal, Islands of Adventure, and all the other theme parks play a big role throughout the hospitality industry. Orlando has a big aviation industry as people are flying in, and all of these hospitals, well, they got to have people to meet those needs. We have Orlando International Airport and Sanford International Airport up in Sanford, along with several other airports. Orlando Executive and Lockheed Martin is a massive employer here throughout the Orlando area. However, although Orlando tends to be a younger crowd, Florida is an older crowd, and so Orlando I wouldn't say is just young, even though it's kind of an island, and I'll address more of that island later. There's a wide variety of ages here, and so the healthcare industry is big because we're a pretty good sized city. Technology is another part of the job market that's boomed really in the last 5 years. I recently toured a training facility where they train soldiers on how to drive those tanks and helicopters that we see. It's pretty cool. Orlando has a big film production industry, and ironically, it's one of the largest in the United States. And who would have thought about that? I had no idea. The unemployment rate in Orlando is typically lower than the rest of the state is. So the public transportation in Orlando proper is really a big deal, and it's really good. It's a pro for this area. Now, when we get outside of Orlando, it's not so much. But in the Orlando area, we have the limo buses, which I think I just saw one ride by a minute ago. We have the Lynx system, which Lynx has, I believe, 88 routes for this area. Orlando is a big city, but it's not big like New York or Los Angeles or Boston. So in those cities, the public transportation tends to be better as it stretches out of Orlando proper. Here, when you kind of leave this downtown area, it kind of just falls apart. Outside of Orlando, there is a county system. Like every county has their own system, but there really isn't much else. Now, one area that that Florida, I should say, has really improved here is the Sunrail system. And Sunrail runs all the way down in Point Siena and Kissimmee, runs all the way up through Orlando and up past Debary into Deland. And the Sunrail is a quite inexpensive thing that they installed, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago here. And it's a great start to improving the public transportation throughout Orlando's core. So I'm here now in front of the Dr. Phillips Center for the second pro, and that is cycling. Now, if you look around the area, you're not going to see much in the way of cyclists, and that's because cycling is not a big deal. It's not a pro of Orlando in Orlando proper. It's a bigger deal in the surrounding suburbs of Orlando. Several cities have great mountain biking trails, and if you want to get crazy about it, head up to the Ocala National Forest, which is probably, I'm going to say it's an hour and a half up the road. Here in the Orlando area and on the suburbs, we have several multi-use trails. We have trails that will take you from here up into Seminole County, up into Volusia County. You can go past several trails, and they all connect up, which is the big part about it. These multi-use trails are probably 6 foot wide, 6 or 8 feet wide, and they connect all the way over to Edgewater and New Smyrna Beach on one end, and you can take those things all the way over to the other coast, which is a fantastic pro in this area. Debary, Florida, which is about 30-40 minutes north of us here, is one of only 12 trail towns in the entire state of Florida, but Windermere and Claremont are great destinations for bikers. The next pro is the entertainment. Look, there is so much to do here in the Orlando area. Of course, there's Walt Disney World, Magic Kingdom, and Epcot. There's SeaWorld, Universal Studios, Harry Potter and Jurassic World. Discovery Cove is a personal favorite of mine. You can actually swim with the dolphins. There's the Crayola experience, which is a little bit more affordable because a lot of the stuff's very expensive. Legoland, which is a fantastic destination for the kids, it'll run you $100 a day for a kid over 2 years old. I think that's a little crazy. I would say it's dumb, but they still pack that place out day in and day out. International Drive has all sort of clubs and restaurants. They have Wonderworks, which is an upside down building, which is a fantastic place to check out. We have the beaches. We have Daytona Beach, New Smyrna Beach. Cocoa Beach is right straight east of Orlando. We have some fantastic springs, 72-degree water year-round. And the Orlando area, well, all of Central, I should just say Florida, is loaded with lakes. The St. Johns River comes down through the outskirts of Orlando, and there's just a ton of lakes everywhere you look. We have the Orlando Magic, the Orlando City Soccer Club, the Orlando Pride, the Solar Bears, and maybe we're going to get a baseball team. We'll see. The people in Tampa may not appreciate that, but I'm hoping the Rays come to Orlando. We also, here in Orlando, have a fantastic nightlife. There are all sorts of clubs and activities. Orlando's a pretty busy place right now, but on the weekends during the day, there's not a lot going on. But during the day here in the Orlando area proper, it's busy, but after 9 o'clock, it lights up again. So the next pro of living in Orlando, Florida is the diversity. There's a lot of diversity here. Orlando is a town of around 330,000 people, and they say that about 43% of those people are white alone. Now, I don't know exactly what white alone is, but 23% of those people are black alone, same thing. 35% are Hispanic or Latina. And the tourism industry really brings in people from all over the world and adds to our sense of diversity here. I'm here today in Lake Eola Park, and there are all sorts of people from all different backgrounds, and it really is fantastic. Now, most of us here in Florida are Yankees. I grew up in Michigan, and so Orlando is very welcoming to all sorts of people, to people from all over, even Buckeyes. You know, go blue, I just got to say it, but if you're moving here from anywhere in the United States, Orlando has people from your state. So the next pro I'm going to talk about is the food. There is fantastic food here throughout the Orlando area. This diversity that I just spoke of a minute ago gives us great food not only right in Orlando, but up around throughout Orlando too. Orlando supposedly has like 7,700 restaurants. Now, I've never counted them. I don't know how big of a space that is, but that's a lot of stinking restaurants in my eyes. They have restaurants featured in diners, drive-ins, and dives. There's fantastic arepas around here. That's my personal favorite. Whenever I come down to Orlando, I'm going somewhere to get me some arepas. Fantastic Indian and Chinese food throughout the Orlando area. Now, is that all? No. If you're watching this video and you can think of something that I've overlooked here regarding how good the food is, put that in the comments below so that we can all know. The hotels in the area really step it up a bit as well. The hotels have a captive audience, and people often select a hotel here in the Orlando area because of the food that they offer, and oftentimes they are willing to pay for that. So the food in the hotels can be really, really good. Now look, Orlando is not New York City good, but it's good. You know, if you get out of Orlando proper, there's a lot of other fantastic restaurants over in Windermere, Claremont, over in Winter Park, or up in Sanford and Deland. There's a lot to offer. So there are numerous pros, and the very last pro that I'm going to address today is the temperature. Temperatures in January run you 52 to 72 degrees. In April, probably 63 of a low and probably 83 as a high. October, 68 to 85. Now, those are fantastic, dreamy temperatures, and that's why people come to Orlando, Florida from all around the world. We have no snow. And so, well, technically it did snow in Florida. Up in the Panhandle, we had this snow this year, but look, it does not snow anywhere near the Orlando area. This great weather offers us a lot of time to hunt, to fish, to hike, to play disc golf, to golf, or what in the world ever you do. I could go on and on with that. So there's a lot of great things to do because of this weather. However, one thing I did not address, and it's our first con, and that's the summer heat. Look, from May through September here, it is smoking hot. You see me now, it is not late in the year, and I'm already sweating. It's literally dripping off my face. That's pretty disgusting as I'm talking to the camera here. But it is disgusting, and the humidity is just getting started. It's late morning here, but the humidity is a real problem. You must have air conditioning in your car and in your homes here in Florida. or you're going to sweat 24/7. Afternoon thunderstorms you can almost set your clock to, and they only make the humidity worse. Orlando is the lightning capital of the world, and it's because those thunderstorms, the high humidity, and for some reason it just seems to bring the lightning here to the Orlando area. The last part of this con is the hurricanes. We're expected to have 17 named storms this year. 4 of them are expected to be major. Now, it is true that hurricanes don't come every year, and maybe we'll have nothing this year. Maybe we'll have a lot of them that will come and just zoom along the coast and not provide any problems at all to us. But nonetheless, hurricanes are a definite con here in the Orlando area. So the next con I'm going to address when living in Orlando, Florida is the critters, because we've got a lot of them here. That beautiful weather that I spoke of a minute ago makes it really prime for all sorts of critters. We have alligators. Now, alligators, I have told people for years and years, especially those moving here that my team and I have helped buy homes, I tell them, look, alligators are not a problem for you. But just the other day, I was watching on the news about a lady who got knocked out of her canoe and eaten by an alligator. Pretty gruesome. Don't want to go into the whole thing, but it was pretty crazy. And when I see something like that, it hits a little close to home because I tell people they're not a problem. We also had a bear attack just yesterday. A bear killed an elderly man and his dog down in Collier County, which is down south, probably 3 or 4 hours from us. Now, we just don't think these things are going to happen, but sometimes they do. Sharks are another one. In our beaches, we'll get 3 or 4 shark bites a year. Now, mind you, there's probably millions or billions of people in Florida's beaches every year. It only happens to 3 or 4 people, but it's a concern for me when I go out in 6 or 8 feet of water off the beach. It's a big deal. The next one is mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are serious here in Florida. Now, they are not big as they are up in north, and like when I was in Michigan or even up in Alaska where I visited. They were serious up there, but look, here we've got the abundance of them. We also have these little things called no-see-ums. Now, they're these tiny little bugs that you can hardly even see. They come out at night. I think they're worse over at the beaches. But here in the Orlando area, they do exist. And they come out pretty much in low light situations, early morning and in the evenings when there's no wind. And they will just kind of bite at you. And they're a real problem. Then there's the snakes. We've got every kind of snake known to man right here in the Orlando area. Lastly, spiders. We got some serious spiders. Now, some of these things are everywhere you go. Spiders, snakes, mosquitoes, they are everywhere. But if you want to live in an area that does not have an abundance of alligators, an abundance of bears, or those type things, or you just want to be away from water altogether, give us a shout, because we can get you in an area where those things are less of an issue. So the next con of living in the Orlando area is the cost of the theme parks. Now, the theme parks are an amazing pro for us. We love our theme parks. But look, a one-day Disney pass for a Florida resident a special that they're offering without any discounts is going to run you $120. And that's just to walk in the door. That does not include parking. That does not include souvenirs. You know, my wife and I, back when our children were little, we used to open and close the parks just because that gave us an opportunity to get our money out of it. I recently bought 4 tickets for somebody back in September, and I spent over $800. $800 plus parking, plus food, plus souvenirs. Look, it is serious stuff. You can easily spend $300 to probably $800 a night down in those hotels, but look, you could also spend well more than that. I've lived in the Orlando area since the 80s, and I don't even like the theme parks. And you may not like them either. When I first came down, they were fine, but over the years, I just don't like them. And a lot of the locals here in the Orlando area, they're not going to them either. The next con of living in Orlando, Florida is politics. Now, politics, if you're a Democrat, that is, because we are a red state where Republicans rule. We like our guns, God, and a conservative way of thinking, but Orlando is really a blue city. Orlando is, I don't know, it's a blue island amidst all this red that surrounds it. I've recently helped a few of my customers, Democratic customers, leave the area for blue states because they had just had enough of this conservative way of thinking. The next con is the cost of living. Now, I'm unsure if it's really a pro or a con, but look, it used to be, Orlando that is, used to be a very inexpensive place to live, but since COVID, housing prices have risen dramatically. Orlando is now 7% more affordable than the national average, whereas it used to be, I'm just guessing, but 20-30%. It used to be a very inexpensive place to live. It's also, we're still 3.8% more affordable than the rest of Florida for a cost of living. I filled up the other day in my truck and I spent $3.05 for gas. Now, gas ranges from $2.75 maybe over at Sam's or BJ's to maybe $3.25 up at some of these other gas stations. Taxes are going to run you about $3,000 to $5,000 for a 3-2 home with 1,500 square feet. Now, that's a round number, and of course that can depend if you're on a lake and assess values and all that good stuff. Electric bills can vary widely. My house runs me $175 to maybe $250. I have a house and an in-law suite at my home, so effectively I have two homes. But I hear people all the time that tell me their electric bills are $400 or $500 a month. Groceries can vary widely too, depending on whether you shop at Aldi, Walmart, Winn-Dixie, or Whole Foods, or Publix. Walmart milk is going to run you about $3 a gallon, but it's going to run you about $4.50 at Publix. That same Publix is going to run you $5.50 for a dozen eggs, whereas Walmart is going to run you around $4. Florida is great because we have no state income tax, but do we think that Florida is just running its entire government and all the services it offers for free? No, they have to get that money somewhere. So I believe a big part of that comes from its property taxes, because our property taxes do tend to be higher than a lot of other areas. Now, we're not comparing property taxes to California, New York, or New Jersey, but to other states here in the South, our taxes are pretty high. There is discussion of Florida removing property taxes on homesteads. I'm really excited about this. It could be a fantastic thing. It could spread the cost that property taxes were covering throughout everybody. My hope is that they'll put it on the sales tax, and then the tourists here in the Orlando area can help pay for that. But there's others that aren't so happy with that idea. Maybe it goes back to that politics thing. I'm not really sure. Plus, our home and auto insurance rates here in not only Orlando, but throughout Florida are among the highest in the entire nation. So we're here now on I-Drive, or International Drive. And as we got here, there's a lot of traffic, and that's the next con of living here in Orlando. The traffic in Orlando is almost New York, LA, or DC bad, but look, that's not a compliment. I-4, which runs from up in Daytona Beach all the way down through Tampa, down to Tampa, runs right through the heart of Orlando, and it can be a nightmare, and not just at rush hour. I've been on I-4 on Sundays at 2 o'clock, and it's sitting there for like 2 hours. They have built the Beltway, the 429, 417, and the Wekiva Parkway, which they helped. They just finished that up in the last couple of years, but it's not enough. Now they have express lanes through much of I-4, and that's real helpful. But look, the tolls can eat you up on the Beltway and the express lanes down through. The 408, the 414, there's toll roads everywhere through Orlando. Do they help with the traffic? Well, yes, they do, but do they solve the problem? Do they help your wallet at all? Absolutely not. Traffic runs throughout the Orlando area. It's a problem throughout all of Orlando, all the way up north to, I'm going to say, the St. Johns River, up north of Sanford, and down south, probably too on the other side of Kissimmee and Point Siena. So that is a serious con of living here in the Orlando area. You know, Orlando and the Orlando area is certainly not perfect, but it has a lot to offer. Is this a comprehensive list of pros and cons in Orlando? Well, no, absolutely not. Much of it has to do with your life and your situation. So if you have more questions about Orlando or any of its suburbs, or if you're thinking about moving here to the Orlando area, just give us a shout and we can help find the right home for you based on your needs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.